That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Cloud Talk Live. I'm so glad you're here. Oh yeah, you're getting the behind-the-scenes view today. Isn't that fun? I had a few extra minutes on my hand, and so I thought, let's see if I can add another camera view. And yes, I could. Hey everyone, my name is Jeff DeVerter. I'm the Chief Technology Evangelist here at Rackspace Technology, and I am excited to be here with another episode of Cloud Talk Live. Back to that familiar camera view that you all know and love. Everyone, welcome to the program. This is going to be a lot of fun. Now, as you know, we're still in the middle. We're not middle of March. We're at the end of March, but it's still March. And March is Women's History Month here in the U.S. And as such, we have made all of March all about women in technology. And today is no difference. If you have watched on LinkedIn, you have seen that Miss Kelly Jax is going to be here, and I'm excited about that. Hey, Todd Catlett knows the rules. If you guys are watching, and if you are, you're right here listening to me, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. So tell me who you are, tell me where you are in the world. And we've got Paul Greenfield from London, our first international to introduce himself. Thanks so much, Paul. Glad that you are here. I hope you are thinking up some great questions for Kelly, and you're going to really enjoy hearing her story. So all the usual suspects, folks. Introduce yourself. We've covered that. And if you're interested in learning more about the things that we do here as part of the Solve program here at Rackspace, our thought leadership program, just head over to www.rackspace.com/solve, and you will find no sales there other than great information that's there for free. Nothing really requires any information from you. You can get all our articles, you can get our research, you can get infographics, you can link to the podcast. By the way, if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, it's as easy as going to anywhere you find podcasts: Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play, Stitcher, anywhere. It's all there. All right. So a couple other intros. We've got John Wallace here. We've got Serena's here. We've got Saddam here from India. A couple of India here. We always have a good turnout from India. Love you guys and girls in India. All right. I mentioned that Kelly Jax is here today, and that's going to be a really interesting conversation because it takes us deeper, of course, all in technology, but it takes us deeper into use cases for how technology is being used. And this story today that we're going to get in and tell is from a company called Jax and Health, and that's where Kelly works. And they have a product that is all about helping folks all around the world with a common problem. Did you know that 1 in 8 people across the globe deal with sleep apnea? And yes, I was one of those 8. That's right. One of those 8. Now, when I was diagnosed with this was back in the early 2000s. And the process in the early 2000s was absolutely, you schedule a sleep study. Anybody have trouble sleeping away from home? Yeah, that would be me. Anybody have trouble sleeping with a million wires on your head? Yeah, that was me. But still, I was eventually able to fall asleep. They're eventually able to take all that data. They send it to a sleep specialist. Weeks or months later, you get an appointment with a sleep specialist who says, yes, you have that issue. Hey, look, Paul's got that issue. Paul, welcome to Team Sleep Apnea. And Clark Kent, yes, same as well. So eventually you get your information, and then you got to go get fitted for the CPAP device, which when I did it was like a scuba helmet. Okay, it wasn't that bad. It felt like it was that bad. I was kind of embarrassed about it too, to be honest with you. And the wife couldn't sleep with that noise in the room. Now I'm sleeping in the guest room. It was not a happy situation. But eventually it got better. No, it didn't heal itself. There was some surgery involved, but it was something that I will never forget that experience. Now, as I mentioned, we've got Kelly Jax here today, and let's bring Kelly on up onto the program because the role that she's in over at Jax and Health is about solving that problem. But first of all, Kelly, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Nice to see you. Nice to see all the comments on the side. And I noticed there's a few people that, as Jeff mentioned, indicated they've got that problem too, or I have that as well. And everybody always has a story, whether that's you personally, maybe that's your bed partner, maybe it's a friend, family member, etc. But it's a very prevalent and common condition that a lot of people don't talk about. So it's great to have this conversation this morning.
Yeah. So, and as I mentioned, I've told a little bit of my story, But I got to tell you that I felt like there was this big stigma about it because it also back in the early 2000s wasn't something that got a lot of airtime from a conversation point of view. I was ashamed about it. I didn't like doing it. It caused me to really delay even the treatment for it. And then I was really upset when I finally got the CPAP device, and I had my first good night's sleep in I don't know how many years, and I was like, oh great, this is the rest of my life. So I was really pretty upset about that. But I didn't want to talk about it with friends. And I didn't want to talk about it with my wife. So that didn't go well. But in the end, it became this whole treatment thing that I mentioned, that with some surgery in my throat that ultimately that solved that. I don't recommend surgery if you don't have to do it, but in the end, it was dealt with. But not a lot of people deal with it, do they, Kelly?
No, that's exactly right. And as Jeff mentioned, 1 in 8 adults in America have sleep apnea. But what's even more alarming than that is of that, 80% of them are not being adequately treated. So that comes down to about 25 million people walking around America. I always say kind of in a zombie state, right? You're either bed partners elbowing you at night because you're keeping them up, or you're overly tired during the day. As Jeff mentioned, understanding or thinking that a CPAP's the only treatment option can also be really intimidating. I always say CPAP in bed is not always the sexiest thing. And there is essentially just a lot of people that are stuck. I know. But yeah, I mean, you nailed it. There's a bucket or a category of people that don't know how to get treated, don't know where to start. They're fearful of the treatment that the only treatment they think is the option, which is a CPAP, which at GEM, we really take an approach where we can consult and provide diagnostics that are simple, provide treatment options, just educating the marketplace that there is more than one option. And then I think what's most important is the support. And that's really where we differentiate ourselves at GEM. We provide a level of support because 50% of people who use a CPAP fail within the first 30 days. And again, that contributes to that 80% of people that are not adequately being treated. So
that's incredible. And it's more than just making sure that somebody gets a good night's sleep too, isn't it? Because somebody who's not getting a good night's sleep has been proven that it is one of the key drivers to overall health of the whole person. But if you go back to what is actually sleep apnea, and that is, you're better to define it than I, but you're effectively stopping breathing and your body goes into freak out mode.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm so glad you brought that up. So for those of you that maybe aren't as familiar with the anatomy of sleep apnea, our chief scientific officer mentioned this kind of analogy to me. Have you ever had a really thick milkshake and you've tried to suck it out with a straw? It's virtually impossible. So what happens is the airway collapses. And then when you're sleeping, you stop breathing. And just like you mentioned, Jeff, you go into fight or flight mode. It increases your heart rate. It increases your blood pressure. And of course, you're losing sleep. So as you're doing that night over night over night, it leads to near-term impacts to your health. It leads to long-term impacts to your health that it can affect your relationships. It can affect your work. And the list goes on.
Yeah, it really does. All right. So I think we've clearly defined the problem and the opportunity statement. So what's your role over at GEM Health? What do you do?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I'm head of sales and strategic business partnerships. But I also think that a big role that we take at GEM is really being thought leaders in the marketplace to continue to bring, like as I mentioned, awareness to this highly prevalent condition and educate the marketplace, educate the patients on how to get diagnosis, how to get different treatment option recommendations, and then how to be successful, how not to be part of that alarming statistic of those who are walking around with untreated sleep apnea.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, do you want me to kind of go? Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, to say let's so you guys have a solution. You're thought leaders in the let's get into
I have a solution. I've
different about the situation now from where I was, 20 some years ago with 1 million electrodes on my head, sleeping in a strange place with somebody staring at me. Very odd.
Exactly. I've got some props to share with you guys as well.
Hey.
So at GEM, we offer really a single access point for those individuals who might not know where to go, might not know how to get started, and they can purchase a disposable home sleep study. So as Jeff mentioned, all the wires in a sleep center. I mean, think about how oftentimes you're traveling and you struggle sleeping in a hotel room without straps all over you. So essentially you order this, you get it in 1 to 2 business days, you put it on just like a watch, put the lead up to your index finger, and you sleep 1 night with this device on. You take it off in the morning, and then you can throw it in the recycling bin. We have a clinical team across the country who is interpreting the sleep studies. They are providing the prescription and treatment recommendations based on the results of the test, and we can offer those within 24 to 48 hours. I had mentioned on a few different notes here that we offer different treatment options. So one, of course, is the CPAP. And a lot of that is based on what your AHI is. And your AHI stands for how many times an hour you stop breathing at night. So there are different severities of sleep apnea. So the CPAP is one treatment option that we offer at GEM. But another one that a lot of people aren't as familiar with is called an oral appliance therapy. So we would recommend oral appliance therapy to individuals that maybe didn't want a CPAP or have failed at CPAP historically. Again, all based on their results. I can tell you guys a quick story. Of course, I nudged my husband to take a home sleep test, even though he didn't think he had sleep apnea, although I suspected he did because he was snoring. Sure enough, he was diagnosed with sleep apnea. And he told me that he would rather get a nose job than wear a CPAP. And I said, okay, well, thankfully there are other options than having to get a nose job. And we went in and got him a custom oral appliance device. And it's simply like a retainer that you put in your mouth, and it opens up your airway and it moves the jaw out, and it is just as effective as a CPAP. And so he is using that and seeing success so far. The other component I'll just quickly mention, a lot of times, let's go back to the CPAP. If you were to go the CPAP route, as Jeff mentioned, he had to go in to a center and basically put, big helmet on, if you will, to do a mask fitting. We've also used technology in this way that I think you guys will appreciate. Every time you log in or unlock, that's a better word to use, your cell phone, we use that same mobile device technology for face fitting. So we'll answer a few questions on how you sleep at night, but you'll essentially scan your face and we can give you a mask fitting based on the results of that scan. And all of this is supported by our support program. Every single patient within the GEM experience is tied to a coach. And again, that goes back to that high failure rate of sleep apnea treatment. And that coach will help you along the way. We also have a community that you can connect with, talk to others about best practices, share your story like Jeff shared his story here with us. And then finally, data. We all know how important data is. We offer progress reporting. So in my husband's case, he can actually see that his heart rate has reduced night over night after having an effective sleep apnea treatment through the oral appliance therapy. And then last but not least, we also offer remote patient monitoring as well. Today, the sleep clinics, they're not offering remote patient monitoring because they're not getting paid. And DMEs are doing kind of the bare minimum, but not essentially getting to the root cause. And so this is a little bit of how GEM is kind of coming into the sleep apnea space and being disruptive and truly finding a solution for folks to get diagnosed, to get treatment, and have support along the way.
Incredible stuff. So folks, as in all the conversations that we've been having over the past, several years, is that this whole cloud transformation thing, we get really wrapped around the axle of helping companies here at Rackspace and move from on-premise out into the cloud. And ultimately what companies are doing then is they're utilizing that technology to be able to have access to quicker technology, to be able to transform their organizations, to be able to create new service offerings and be able to do that at global scale. Now, what I love about this example here is we've taken a company who's gone purpose fit for taking cloud technology and used it to enable specific services and capabilities. Now, what you find then is an as a service, effectively what we've done here. If we're going to connect the dots from our normal tech, just hardcore technology conversation, we now have an as a service for your health as it relates specifically to how you're sleeping and all of the health that stems from that. And that's one of the things that I get super excited about this, is the fact that you guys have found a very specific use case and you said, how can technology make this better? I tell this story a lot when I talk to customers, and that is, in my early days in technology, it's just back, well, about the same time I've got sleep apnea. Maybe there's a connection. Because I was very deep into the early stages of Microsoft SharePoint. And one of the things it had was the ability to create these task lists, and these task lists could drive workflows. And so I would invariably get invited into a room with a vice president who would say, we've got this bank, I was in financial services at the time, this banking process, we'd love for you to use SharePoint to automate that process, or at least give us greater visibility into it. And they'd always be kind of staring at me like this, going, I bet you're going to fail at this. This new fancy technology is not going to do it. And I would say, I'd love to help you with this process, but here's what we're going to do. I want you to put everybody involved in this process in a room with a big whiteboard, and we'll have a great meeting, and we're going to make some great headway. And they say, okay, we'll do that. And in we'd go. And I would ask a question, all the 5 minutes of introductions. And then I would say, all right, somebody who's familiar with the process, write it on the board. Just grab a color and write it on the whiteboard. And they would write it out, and then hands start shooting up. That's not how that happens. That step B goes to this other thing, and this goes to the other thing. And about 10 minutes into this arguing and redrawing and erasing and drawing again, the vice president would lean in and go, I'm really sorry about this. We actually have no idea how this process works. Every single time. And I would leave I'd say, fix this process, figure out the process, not only just how does it run, but how should it run? So this is what you guys have done. You've said, okay, here's this antiquated process of how to solve sleep apnea, or the situation on sleep apnea, and you've reinvented the healthcare for it to this just in time, bring a doctor in, always monitoring, no more multiple months. I'm speaking from experience here, to a real-time solution. I love that, Kelly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you nailed that. It's a really fragmented experience today. If you even think about how the healthcare companies look at diagnostics in one silo, and then DME, durable medical equipment, in another silo, with not a lot of support to kind of have and require the patient to navigate this fragmented experience. And that's what we've done, broken down those walls, and no longer putting it on the patient's onus, but why not let us solve for that using technology, using cloud-based solutions, and really have the patient in mind. And I think that's where we really differentiate ourselves, is this has to be super simple, consumer centric. I always use this analogy, but it's similar to Uber. So Uber didn't reinvent transportation or build a rocket ship to get people from one point to another, not yet anyways. But they did create an easy way to get from point A to point B. So gone are the days of us having to hail for a taxi or pay cash for a cab. And that's exactly what GEM is doing in the sleep apnea space, is creating a super simple consumer-centric way to go from diagnosis, treatment, and successful outcomes of that treatment for likely the rest of their lives. Jeff is a little bit of an anomaly in the fact that he made some significant lifestyle changes and had surgery to reduce, if not completely eliminate, his sleep apnea. Most people, as Jeff mentioned, have sleep apnea for the rest of their lives. There are, of course, things you can do, quit smoking, drinking, and lose weight to reduce it or eliminate it. But for the most part, it's a diagnosis that you get for the rest of your life. So why isn't there support today for these people? It's a change, a lifestyle change that you almost have to make immediately when you get that CPAP delivered to your house, or you go into that dentist to get an oral appliance therapy. And that's what our coaches really specialize in, is the behavior modifications to help somebody understand and become adherent to a new change in their life. So we have a motto that we want to put them on autopilot. And that's where a lot of the data comes into play as well. When they can start seeing that their blood pressure is reducing, that their heart rate is reducing, when they can start feeling better the next day. That, as you mentioned, Jeff, you're like, oh man, this really does work. I guess I have to live like this for the rest of my life. It's eye-opening. And that's where our coaches come into play to help create the ease of the diagnosis and just completely educate the patient and what their journey forward looks like.
Yeah, so you called out the fancy device that you guys send out within a day or two, and ultimately finds its way to the recycle bin because it goes so quickly. But how then, in ongoing experience, do things like iWatches or other personal wearable tech fit into the story?
I'm so glad that you mentioned that. You've always heard of BYOB, right? So we always kind of say, bring your own device. A lot of us are wearing an Apple Watch, a Whoop, a Aura ring. And so we allow our patients to bring these devices to the experience. So that way they can start tracking the data. And through our web-based mobile app, we can actually see data day over day and ultimately gain that baseline. So then a week down the road, 3 weeks down the road, they can look back and look at the success or the changes that have taken place for actually staying adherent to their sleep apnea treatment.
Yeah, here you go back in time. In my situation, my only metric was, how do I feel? At this point,
Yeah.
I normally would sleep because the thing was so loud. But and it was the only treatment option at that point. But now, you can get people, well, not with my little fancy Casio, but people can be involved in their own personal health care over time and see what's happening, what's working, and maybe needing adjustment even.
Absolutely.
Hey, we are getting some great feedback over here, Alicia.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking over here too.
We don't normally do this, but if somebody wants to get involved in this, or they want to send this to their partner who is keeping them up at night, how does somebody get started, or where do they go?
Yeah, so it's gem.health, and you can check us out online, of course. I know, Jeff, my contact information will be provided as well, and I know there's a LinkedIn post, but I'd be more than happy to connect with anyone if they're looking for support, if they're looking for, helping an organization with their employees. But yeah, definitely feel free to reach out to me from a online perspective or email as well.
Yeah, and so we talked about the speed that diagnosis and treatment can begin, as opposed to where it was in the past, the ease that it makes it better. But real quickly, one of the things I forgot to bring up earlier or query about is the finances for that. How does that fit into the whole story?
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think this actually goes back to timeliness to diagnosis and timeliness to treatment. So we've talked about that fragmented experience. A lot of times it requires a primary care physician referral to first, and then to go into a sleep doctor. And then at that point, then you get an in-center sleep option, or you may get a home sleep test, but oftentimes you'll take that home sleep test home. Then you'll have to drive it back to the doctor's office, bring it back, and then you'll have to wait for a few weeks to get your results. And then guess what? You have to go back into the doctor's office to get your results and finally get your diagnosis. And then at that point, you will typically get maybe a recommendation or referral to 2 or 3 different DMEs. You as the patient got to figure out what even a DME means, and then where to go for that. And then, as Jeff mentioned, going in and doing more face mask fittings. So again, kind of choppy. So why the timeliness to diagnosis is so important, and how it ties into the financial savings, is that GEM, we can do this in 1 episode of care. Where in the traditional sleep apnea path, it is maybe 3 or 4 episodes of care. So on average, GEM is saving the patient or the healthcare system about between $500 and $1,000 per episode to diagnosis. And so being able to diagnose quicker in the comfort of your home and save you money, it seems to be a no-brainer.
Well, especially if you were to think that if 1 in 8 people in the world have this issue, and 1 in 8 people actually went and got treatment because it was so much easier, or even just were motivated to go do it, think of the savings to the healthcare system itself, which we all pay for anyway.
Absolutely. Untreated sleep apnea will cost the healthcare system about $9,000 per year. Treated sleep apnea, it is about $6,000 per year. So there's a $3,000 delta per year per patient. But again, that goes back to think of all the additional benefits that treated individual has from relationship, from work, absenteeism, presenteeism. The list goes on the benefits of treated sleep apnea.
Really does. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for being a part of the program here today. This is, everybody has absolutely loved what we've been chatting about here and the solution that you guys have brought in. I got to tell you, producer Daniel and I were chatting and we're like, Kelly Jax, man, that's like a superhero's name. So you're the sleep superhero now. So it's like the new Marvel person, how to get study. But at any rate, thank you so much for being a part of this today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to connecting with some of the folks on the right side of my screen who are talking about sleep apnea and having it themselves.
Yeah, folks, if you see the link that we posted here to get out to Jax and Health, but also in the LinkedIn post of how you found us, Kelly's connected there. So you can always reach out to her there and say, how do I do this? And she'll tell you.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much. You got up early in your West Coast time zone today, and we sincerely appreciate that. And coffee in hand. Very good. And we are back next week. It's going to be an incredible episode with, actually, we got somebody coming in from Germany. So she gets to do hers a little later in the day. So I think that is going to about do it for today's episode of Cloud Talk Live. Folks, you can always find more information out at rackspace.com/solve. Go check that out. Until next week, my name is Jeff DeVerter. I'm the Chief Technology Evangelist here at Rackspace Technology.